From Salt Lake City, Utah, this is Heart of the Matter, where we do all we can to worship God in spirit and truth. I'm your host, Shawn McCraney, and I'm sitting here with my dear friend. We're calling this program Catching Up with Christy Johnson. There's a lot to catch up with, and so we're going to get to that in just a second. On August 6th, HOTM is going back to our focus on Mormonism. That's how we started on a full-power television station here in the state for 7 years, and we're going back to it after another 7 years where we have looked at organized religion in general, specifically Evangelicalism and Christianity. So between now and then, we have some great interviews lined up beginning tonight with Christy, and so much to talk about with her. Then next week, July 2nd, we're going to have Ryan McKnight here, and Ryan and I are going to be talking for 3 shows in a row. That'll be July 2nd, 9th, and 16th. And then on July 23rd and 30th, we're going to end our HOTM 2.0 with Tom Stalling, who spent 3.5 hours. Christy was here. Tom revealed a story that'll blow your mind. And so we're going to finish up HOTM 2.0 on July 23rd and 30th with him. So get ready for HOTM Redux to come back August 6th. And I mean, get ready. We're going to be thinking about a lot of things. A lot has happened in the 7 years we haven't been talking strictly about Mormonism. So many things have changed, and it's in flux as well as the members. By the way, on August 1st, that's a Thursday here in Salt Lake City, the Sunstone Symposium, which I think is going to be held up near the U of U. That's going on. I'll be speaking there on Thursday from 3:45 to 4:45. You can register for the Sunstone Symposium by going to sunstonemagazine.com. And if you want to see that speech or any of the others, it's like a 3 or 4 or 5 day event here. Big speeches, lots of people up there. Check that out. And then on September 7th, I'm going to be speaking in London at the Sunstone Symposium there as well. Hans Mattsson's going to be the keynote speaker there, and I'm going to be speaking right before him, so we're going to go with that. I want to talk about 3 things really quickly about books, and 3 things to say about books before we get to talking with my ex-girlfriend, Christy Johnson. Book talk number 1. This is a really good book. It's called Critical Thinking for Mormons. I just got it. It just came out. It's by an author named Paul Douglas. And it's heavy reading because it's teaching you how to address logical fallacies that the LDS use and other religions in establishing their truth claims. And it's really, really good. And I'm going to be promoting it over the course of the next few years. But it's called Critical Thinking for Mormons, and it's Paul A. Douglas. So check that one out. Vanna, hand me another book, will ya?
Which one do you want? This one?
Why not? See, this is called Knife to a Gunfight. It's my favorite book, and if you want to challenge your stance in biblical literalism, in using the Bible as your ultimate authority, you want to challenge religious history, consider Knife to a Gunfight, and then we have End of Material Religion, and then we have If My Kingdom Was of This World, Then My Servants Would Fight, which is a great little 1-minute read. Then we have the book that started all, I Was a Born Again Mormon. And then we have the big one, the encyclopedia where Mormonism meets biblical Christianity face to face. Now, all of these are available on Amazon. All of these are available in hard copy, obviously. And for 14 years, as these books have been written and distributed, we have given away at least 80% of them. We print them, we write them, we print them, we give them away to anybody who comes to our church or comes to our shows, who wants them, who's interested, and we mail a hell of a lot of them too. Well, a new trend has picked up. Where did my little bag go? Oh, here it is. There's a new trend that's picked up, and it's pissed me off to no end. Our naysayers and critics are doing a little game. They're writing us and saying, hey, can we have your book for free? Because we give them for free. So we say, sure, and we box up the books, and we spend the postage to send it to them, and then it gets to them, and they say, the recipient says, we don't want it. So we pay for the postage to go out, and then they send it back to us, and then we get a thing from the post office that says, they didn't want it, now pay the postage for them sending it back. So it cost us $7.50 with this little ruse to help drain our resources because of these frickers, which I would use another word, but I'm in mixed company tonight. These frickers are messing with us. And so what they've done is, after 14 years of gladly sending them out, we are not going to play that game. So if you want the books, come here or buy them. It's going to be one way or the other. You will get them free if you come here. We're not mailing books out anymore because of idiots like that. We've tried to do it right, but it's not possible. Final story on books. I was at this event. You can see a poster. You can see a T-shirt behind it. Was it last week?
It was a few days ago.
Hold that up, will you, please? Very nice. It was a few weeks ago. No Crime and Sin. It was the world premiere of this excellent movie that was shown at the Rose Wagner Theater in downtown Salt Lake City. There were how many people, Christy?
Oh, about 300.
About 300. I think there were more. I think that their tally people were drinking. I think there were 428. I bet that when I was there. Anyway, it was a great film, well supported. Christy, she blew my mind with a number of presentations. We're going to talk about those in a second. But while I was there, I had the opportunity to run into different people I had known over the years that I haven't seen in years. And one was a couple. I'm going to call them the Fire Couple. I'm just going to call them that. And the Fire Couple live in Draper. And I knew them when they came out of Mormonism, and they were all hot for Jesus and trying to figure out what they were going to believe. And the Fire Couple, they're older than I am. I said, so how are you guys doing? What are you doing in terms of church? And they kind of looked embarrassed to talk to me, and they're just like, yeah, really don't believe. We don't believe in anything anymore. And I'm like, okay, I know people make that decision. And my friend Larry, he said that's part of the process, and I think it is. When you've been a Mormon, not believing anything is part of the process. So we can't get too freaked out over that. But they said, we tried every church possible. And even, they live in Draper. We even went to the big church in Draper, SMCC, the church I hate. And this is what happened to us. I didn't coach them. I said nothing. The man said, the pastor's wife came up to us. This is a multi-million-dollar church. And handed me a book. And I think it was God 101. And she said, it all starts with this. And so he's like, oh, okay, thanks. And then she whispered, that's $10, by the way. She whispered, that's $10, by the way. That we have people coming out of Mormonism, walking into freaking Christian churches, and they're trying to sell them books and put it in their hands first, just like a slimy salesperson, and then tell them the price. And we wonder why so many people are failing in a relationship with God when they go to these local churches and they have the rock concerts and they have the tithes and now they have to buy our books. It's bullshit. And so I just had to talk about those three things with books before we go to my sister, my good friend.
Now I'm a little frightened.
The girl who snubbed me so many years ago at a steak dance.
Hey, can I make my own announcements and sure onto it?
Do it.
That'll give you a moment to breathe.
Go.
Okay. So this Friday, Brielle Decker, who's been on your show.
She has.
She was the 65th wife of Warren Jeffs, and she escaped polygamy. Her poetry has been set to music and intertwined with Rochelle Call, who left a domestic violence situation a long time ago. And so she's going to be performing, Rochelle Call, along with Jen Marco, who is a very well-known vocalist out of Utah. And they are doing this performance this Friday in Utah, in Salt Lake City, at the place called The Well. It's free. You can get tickets at Eventbrite. So
that's in Sugar House, The Well.
Oh, okay.
It's a church, right? It's a church. It's in Sugar House.
Yeah.
You can look it up. The Well. Brielle at The Well.
There you go. But it's going to be
fantastic. Or you'll go to hell.
I have tickets already. I'm so excited. I got a little preview earlier.
Do you need to get tickets?
You do need to, but you can get them at the door.
Okay.
But you can get them through Eventbrite, but it's all free. And if you do donate money, it goes right back to the Sound Coalitions,
all right.
and which is a nonprofit coalition.
Other announcements. You made some at the premiere afterward. What's happening? Just let's get to the announcements first of what's happening,
Sure,
and then
let's
catch up with everything you've done.
Okay. Well, yeah. What's coming around now is if you go to nocrimeandsin.com on our contact list, you can actually fill out some information there. If you want to see the film, if you want us to do a screening in your state, the more requests that we get, we're going to go to those states first. And we'll do a screening where I can speak or do a Q&A and also watch the film. And we just want everyone to see it. And they're also working on some distribution of it. So that'll be coming later on. But right now we're traveling around the United States with the film.
Can we help at all as the general populace to help with the distribution in other venues, like Netflix, and say, how come you aren't showing No Crime Is... Why don't you get No Crime and Sin? Would that benefit your cause at all?
You know what? I don't even think it's a problem of that. I think it's just, I don't know. I'll find out for you.
Yeah, find out.
To be very honest.
All right.
I don't know.
So, when was it that we reconnected after? You might know this if you watch the show, but Christy and I go way back to Orange County when I was 17 or 18 and she was 26 or 27. And you started it. Yeah. No, I'm older than her by 2 or 3 years. And anyway, we met, and there was a little spark of attraction, and she set me up, at least on my part.
Oh, okay.
And she set me up with a friend who she happened to run into at the airport yesterday.
Yep.
That I haven't seen in 30 years.
And neither have I. She was my best friend in college.
Wow.
And we used to get into a lot of trouble. And I was waiting with my son for his flight back to Orange County, and there, behold, she comes walking in, and she was on the same flight. And
Wow.
I was like, what are the odds?
That's just amazing.
Yeah.
All of that time, you're here, meet her, I live here. Anyway, so we knew each other then, and then when did you call me? When did we reconnect?
Yeah, we were coming
17?
in 2016.
16.
Wait, no, 2018.
18, yeah.
God, the years have been going by. Yeah, 2018 in June of last year, probably around May.
Mm-hmm.
I think I called you because I've always watched you from afar and watched all your shows through the years. I really did. I followed you. I had a lot of respect for you. And, well, I still do. That sounded weird. But yeah, I was still LDS at the time, but I was very interested in everything that you had to say and followed you. And then I called you and said, hey, we're coming into town. I'd like to invite you to our premiere. And then you said, well, would you like to be a guest? And I'm like, oh, are you kidding? Sure.
So we did 3 hours, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And those were 3 fantastic hours. You really know how to articulate your story. And if you don't know Christy's story, thank you, Reed, for taking care of your phone before
The angels are now up here coming to join us.
That's the sign of the Holy Spirit falling. It's another Pentecost. The film she's talking about was Glass Temples, and that was 22 minutes long. And then we interviewed for 3 times. The story is amazing. How can people know your story if they don't go to No Crime and Sin? Is there another website or way to look at what you've gone through, or is it all through nocrimeandsin.com?
Well, I also have an official ChristyJohnson.com webpage, which we're constantly updating. But as far as the No Crime and Sin, specifically about that particular part of my story, which is really important, you can look at that through the nocrimeandsin.com website, and that gives a lot of information. But to keep up to date with me, it's official ChristyJohnson.com.
Very nice.
Yeah.
So we got together and we did the interviews, and then you went on, and what
In
have
life?
you been doing? You went on in life.
Well, I want to back up really quick because you have no idea what you did for our family. When I came last time, my brother Kim and his wife and 2 kids were here in the audience. And, you know, Kim, he doesn't talk about it much, but he, you know, after his mission, he came home and our whole lives had changed, you know. And Kim kind of became inactive in the church and just kind of kept his options open. And he would attend every now and then. And then his wife would go sometimes with him to church. She's not LDS. But he struggled through the years. I mean, he really struggled like we all do who have come out of being Mormon. And when we were here last, Kim started some kind of conversation with you, and you were handing him books right and left. And Kim's brilliant. He's got a doctor's degree. And the way you connected with him was, there's the angels again. The way you connected with him was pretty incredible because Kim, no one's ever approached him the way you did. And so by the time, Kim walked out with a set of your books, and on our plane ride home back to Orange County, Kim was sitting across the aisle from me, and he's got your book, and he's halfway through one of them, and he's marking it up, and he's like, Christy, did you know this? And I'm like, yeah, 30 years ago, Kim, I knew that, right? But the way you write, the way your knowledge spoke to him, and he finally left the church. And in the movie No Crime and Sin, where it says, where are they now? Kim gave them permission to let people know that he did leave the church, finally.
Wow.
And that, as you know, what that takes a toll on your life, but it actually relieved him of a tremendous burden. But you were very, whatever the word is, you helped him very much, and it was you that
Glad
did that.
I could play a small part, whatever, right?
It was a huge part, so thank you for that.
That's awesome. Well, he's a great guy. I also knew Kevin really well. I actually knew Kevin better than anybody else in your family. He was in the same stake as me with his wife and kids and the big Johnson Kevin Johnson family.
Our big persona. My brother Kevin is the one who passed away. Our mother passed away in 2015, and 5 months later, our brother Kevin passed out of nowhere. And that's the one who I think was closest to you. I think you were on the High Council at the time when he was in your stake.
Yeah, and he is a fantastic guy. I mean, salt of the earth and true blue Mormon.
Yeah.
He really was true blue, but they screwed him, didn't they?
Yeah, they messed with Kevin. He fought for our family and us girls, and the church kept pulling him in and telling him, leave it alone. And he said no. And so they ended up releasing him from every church calling he had. And it was interesting because my dad's on the High Council in Lehigh, the perpetrator, right? Even with the annotation on his record. And Kevin couldn't even be anything. They released him from every calling because he wouldn't leave it alone.
Wow.
And he died. This was Kevin's idea. Kevin, my brother Kim, Kevin, and my sister Kathy and I, when we took care of our mom, we got together and decided we need to go see Dad. We need to have a meeting with him and ask him questions. We reached out to my dad. He said, let's do it. And then Kevin died. And we were like, are you kidding me? And then Kevin, or Kim, Kathy, and I, followed through on that meeting with our dad, and that's what you see in No Crime and Sin.
Picture of Kevin in hand.
We brought Kevin's picture because he was going to be there.
How old was your mom when she passed?
She was in her 70s.
How old was Kevin?
Kevin was actually 54. I thought he was 55.
And Kathy?
Kathy, who passed, was 44 at the time.
Young. Even the 70s.
And young. Kathy in the film, because you see her, she wasn't even sick at the time, which was interesting to see her being diagnosed a year later after the film. When we got called in for the family meeting in the hospital, that's when they said, you probably have about 6 weeks, because the chemo wasn't working anything. And Kathy was like, can you believe this? And she's like, I'm the youngest one in the family. I took care of myself. She used to work out all the time. Like literally we'd go to a restaurant and order hamburgers, and her bun would be lettuce. And I would have the big old, carb bun. And so here I am not working out, and she just takes care of herself. And she's like, can you believe this? And that's when I'm like, oh, so it should have been the older chubby sister? Thanks, So we started laughing in the hospital, and the doctors were like looking at us, and I'm like, oh, this is what we do. Yeah.
You really love your siblings.
I do. Growing up in that kind of a chaotic atmosphere for decades, you become very close to your siblings. I remember when my parents would argue unbelievably, horribly, and I would just say, let's go for a walk, because I was the older sister. So we'd go to the parks and stuff. So.
Can I ask you a tough question?
Yeah, go ahead.
I really don't know how to phrase this except just to say it, but Kathy, she's fed, she's eating the lettuce sandwiches, she's not a carb person like us or whatever. But I also noticed in the film that she was really hard toward your dad. Yeah. She was hard. And I mean, I don't blame her.
Right.
But you seem to be much more forgiving. And I just wonder about the association, which we talked to Tom Stalling last week. You were here about, he said, I can't forgive, I won't forgive. And and I just mentioned to him, that really hurts the individual. I know forgiveness takes time, but do you think there's any sort of association, I know you don't know, between your sister's passing and just the death in her heart toward your dad and what he did?
Yeah, I think, personally, I think when we carry around things, we actually don't realize the toll it takes on us. I never blame people for not forgiving. I think, it's so cliche to say, well, it's for you, but it really is. But I think that it comes down to the individual.
It does.
And if you are able to forgive at some point, years, decades down the road, it's a really good thing for you. Because what we found in the movie is that our father, sitting across from him, he's got no pictures of us. There's no evidence that we even existed in his life, and he went on to live this wonderful life. He's still living a wonderful life even now. And so for Kathy and I and Kim to be looking around being like, wow, we've been carrying this load for decades, and he's off, having a great life, being Mr. Speaker and doing everything, and here we are getting sick and having horrible relationships and not choosing well. And I'm thinking, wow, this sucks big time. And so Kathy carried that around, because not only that, my dad left when she was, I think, 13. And so she had kind of a different upbringing than I did. And we were 9 years apart. So she didn't go through, she went through a little bit of primary, in the church and stuff, but she never really was taught about forgiveness and things like that. So she kind of was raised a little bit by my mom after my dad left. And my mom was not a very good parent. And I mean, God bless her, but she wasn't. And Kathy never had that solid foundation. And I know she became a Christian at one point, but it was a very charismatic church, which was confusing for her. But in the end, Kathy softened up quite a bit.
Oh.
And I saw a huge change in her, because being able to sit across from our father, and Kathy, as you can tell in the film, kept her head lowered. And I did too. I didn't realize our body language was so, and Kim, right on with my dad, sat there and straight across asked him hard questions. And God bless Kim for doing that. But Kathy at one point lifted her head when my dad fumbled over the word repentance. I thought I had repented, but he's like, repent. We're like, repentance? It's really a hard word for you. But so Kathy, her one eyebrow raises, right? And when that happens, it's like, clear the room, because it's going to get ugly. But she just looked at him, and that was her moment in time to be like, I had to live my whole life without your love. And, my dad tried to do his, and she was like, no, shut it down, let me speak. And I had always wished I had been more like Kathy, because to me, Kathy was very strong, and she had to be in her life. But she didn't get that foundation of remembering, the basics in life about stuff. But she ended up being a phenomenal human being, and it was unfortunate that she died. But in the end, she was very soft and met life and death beautifully.
Awesome. No Crime and Sin, you gotta see it. If you're watching we have a lot of people who view outside of Utah, or if you couldn't get it, I would imagine you would go to St. George, even though it's still in Utah, and speak down there and do a screening down there.
Absolutely.
If enough people.
Yeah, if enough people want it, we'll go ahead and do it, and I'll speak and do Q&As, whatever you want, as long as, we can let people see the film.
Yeah. So the way to do it is get online, right?
Yep, www.nocrimeandsin.com, and there's a contact tab up there, and you fill in your information, and there's some room to say something, and you could just say, I want a screening, or just put whatever you want in there. If you want to keep in contact with us, you can do that. You can ask questions, all sorts of things. And I want to take a moment and really thank Mike Norton. I owe that man a solid, I'll tell you, and I hope one day to meet him in person. But, Wendy, your producer, one of your producers, reached out to him on our behalf, and you guys also helped so much in promoting the film, because we ran into a brick wall. And especially being in here in Utah, people were like, oh, anti-Mormon, and oh my God, you know, and we're like, it's not an anti-Mormon film. But Mike Norton, we got him a private viewing of the film through a link. I got the permission from our filmmakers, and he watched it, and the moment he finished the film, he started promoting it in a very huge way. And our views on YouTube and our website quadrupled. And I really thank him so much from the bottom of my heart. And the posts he did were so heartfelt and very raw and honest. And then he gave accolades to my sister Kathy, which made me cry. But Kathy would have loved him, you know, and I can't thank him enough for doing that.
He's a man of passion, man, and when he believes something, he goes, right?
Yep, and I appreciate that about him.
Yeah, so do I. Speaking of a man of passion and going after it when he believes something, you and I, we kind of reunited together, and with the input of a woman named McKenna Denson.
Okay.
And McKenna got involved. She called me out of the blue and wanted to help establish a
GoFundMe.
Oh, GoFundMe. A GoFundMe.
It's a really hard word.
I have another word for it, but I usually don't. You just landed that one, did you?
I know you very well.
Anyway, I have been asked before to do GoFundMe promotions and things, but because it was you, I said I would do anything to try to help you in that very difficult time in your life. And so she told me what to do, and we became acquaintances, and then she was on the show, and we did the interview with her for 3 or 4 hours too. And then you and I, we would have discussions.
Mm-hmm.
And in those discussions over the past year or so, we would say, is there something we're not getting here? And then Mike Norton came out and said, yeah, there's a lot you're not getting here. Yeah. I think it has really harmed causes like yours. I think that in the mind of some people, everyone's going to be one step less motivated to take people's stories on face value because of stories like McKenna's. Now, I'm not saying her story in the MTC is not true. I don't know. It seems like it's true, but all the other stuff, it seems to be really fictitious. What do you think?
Well, actually, you know, to put a positive kind of thing on it, I actually think she did us a favor. And not that she lied. What I mean is that people do this kind of thing all the time, and it's disgusting. And you think it's going to hurt the cause of people that are legitimate or have had really horrendous things happen to them. But I think people, when they do hear stories and they hear people's experiences, I think we should be critical and to make sure that they are true. And I think it's like the Mormon Church. If you can't stand up to the test of time, you know what I mean? But people should be able to stand up to the test of time with their experiences and their stories. And I think we should be kind of a little bit careful. And I think this is a perfect example of us being taken in by somebody who had ulterior motives. And eventually people are found out. They really are. And we, like you said, we don't know what happened. I personally believe Joseph Bishop is a creep. I think he's definitely, there's got some problems, and he probably did those things. Absolutely. That does not excuse her for what she did to other people and the many victims that she left behind. You know, if she had done that to my son and he ended up waiting and not being able to bail himself out and had to wait in jail, boy, there would have been problems. You accuse somebody of rape, because there are rape victims. And when you start doing that, that angers a lot of people, and it should. But this is, we have to look at it like, you know what? It happened. We all learned a lesson from it. And yeah, let's be a little bit critical of people's stories, not saying don't believe them. I'm saying check out the background of it and find out about if the story's true or not.
Have you, I don't know, because we haven't talked about this, have you had people along the way besides the bishop and the stake president or whoever in your story be critical of your story and say, well, Christy, you know, and has that bothered you? Do you mind being vetted for your facts? Do you mind people saying, well, tell me a little bit more about this. I want to know, you know, how did that happen? Does that bug you?
No, it doesn't actually. What's interesting is I think it's okay for people to question you. And I think if you are telling the truth, that you should be okay with that. I'm not saying like people didn't come up and be like, oh, you're lying, your dad's the greatest thing. People said that. That's what bothered me. You know, when they didn't, I had a lady one time at church say, you know, I don't care what your father did. He was a great man, he still is. And that hurt, you know, because you don't need to hear that. Or, oh, it's too bad your sister seduced your father.
Oh.
And I'm like, wow, what is wrong with you? You know, but you have, when you are telling your story and your experience, it's scary because you do need people to believe you, and you do need to find some validation. But that's part of my talk that I gave at this premiere, is that validation has to come from within. If you rely on other people to validate you, you're going to run into a problem. If you know your story is true, you stick to it and you tell until people start believing you, and you will find your people. And you'll, you know, but I think you should be open to people asking questions. It's okay. Not that they should insult you, but it's okay for people to be like, well, could you explain to me this? Or I'm very open to that. I think it's probably because I'm more seasoned now, probably more critical.
It's so healthy. I mean, just for you to say that, I think you're gonna, like you were talking about empowerment at the film, but at the premiere, but it's so healthy for you to empower women to realize that, mostly women, if they come out with a story, that there will be people who will have questions, but not to be offended. They're just trying to vet the information.
Right.
And you make such a good point about McKenna. She caught people just saying something, couldn't really substantiate, maybe some emotionalism, maybe some shock value, and everybody buys into it. And that's what Mormonism does. It hits you with this story, and it's whoa, and people don't check the facts, and they buy into it and get drawn along hook, line, and sinker. So that's really good. I'm really glad to hear you say that.
Thank you. And you know, people sit there and make excuses for people that do what she did. And you know, we all have, you know, how can you not have some kind of mental issues when you go through what we've gone through? But you also have to be careful in not making excuses for people, because there are a line of victims that she hurt, and a lot of people that believed in her. And that was completely wrong of her to do that. She should be ashamed of herself.
Yeah. Isn't one of the arguments, like you just mentioned, that she is operating under a failed system, a system of thinking and operating in this world, and so there's some justification for her antics because she's been so abused and affected along the way that now, and I'm saying this because McKenna herself is like, well, if I'm doing these things and they're not true, I got to get to the source of why I'm doing that.
Yeah, that's bullcrap. I'm sorry.
I knew I could get Christy to totally step up on
well, because I'm about being real and being raw
Right.
and very honest. And you can go through things in your life and you have a choice at some point. You know, I remember meeting McKenna for the first time in January at a conference, and I got up because she was beelining it for me. So there's all these people. I stood up and I just said, hey, it's nice to finally meet you in person. And she's like, what are you talking about? We were raised in the same ward. We grew up together. And I'm like, I don't know what the hell you're talking about. But I was like, I don't know what you got going, you know, but not on my watch. And you just cannot do that to people. Sorry.
So what's in line for you now? I mean, what are your hopes? You did some stand-up at the premiere, which was excellent.
Oh, thank you.
Very good.
Thank you.
And I sincerely liked it. I thought
Really?
it was very funny, yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Not that I'm any judge of stand-up, but I thought it was great.
Can I use you as material too?
Sure, I am a character waiting to be ripped apart. But you also have done it at Wise Guys and other places?
I've done a couple other places, but not more recently. I will now, because that's one of the things we're going to promote, you know, so I can get my own show and things like that eventually. But, you know, I base it off true stories. which is fun, you know, and I love that. So
this will be part of your so-called repertoire.
yeah, whatever that word means. You always throw a word that throws me off.
That's not, you get that one. But so you're going to include your stand-up, and this is part of who you are. And you've always been funny.
Well,
So
thank you.
You're just taking it to the stage now.
I am. You know, I made a promise to my sister. We were able to see her and spend a little bit of like 3 days with her before she passed. And by the time we, you know, were talking with her, she was blind and her head had swollen really bad, and she was partially paralyzed. But she could react. And I told her in her ear that I was going to live my life to the fullest without fear. And, you know, she didn't get to live out her dreams, and Kevin didn't live out his dreams, and obviously my mom didn't. So you know, people are like, well, how can you laugh and go forward? And, you know, and I said, how could I not? You know, I'm going to look at it that way and be like, I'm going to live the best life I can. And it was funny, Jared Ruga, you know, thinks I'm hilarious. And so he was like, you should do comedy. And I was like, okay, when and where? You know, just tell me where you want me to be, and that's what I'll do. Because I don't want to live in fear. I lived in fear for decades. And I'm not afraid to speak my mind. I mean, what's the worst thing that could happen?
So stand-up is part of that.
Yeah.
You have a great stage presence, by the way.
Oh, I do?
I went to Wise Guys to watch Steve. I just
I
walked
love
across.
Steve. Yeah, he's funny.
And I watched the people's stage presence, and so many of them were stilted, and they just couldn't do it. You're like a pro. You're working the stage, walking back and forth.
Yeah,
Really
it's that no
good.
fear, man. I probably got my sister hanging out with me because I just figured, what's the worst thing that could happen? Somebody could heckle you. I already know what I'm going to say, like, Mom? You know what I mean? Like, people get scared about that, and I'm like, don't live in fear.
Yeah.
Just go for it. Whatever you want to do. You want to go back to school, go back to school.
So,
You know?
what else besides stand-up?
Well,
Some motivational speaking?
Motivational speaking. Signing up for, you know.
Specifically to women?
Yeah, it could be men and women, but mostly people who've that are trying to learn how to overcome things. Not that I'm perfect in any sense of the word, but I've been given this gift of knowledge, and, you know, having 3 members of your family die in 3 years and to watch them die, it changes you. And you have some decisions to make in life. And it threw my whole world off. And when Kathy died, that was my wake-up call. And I said, no more. I'm not holding back in the least. And I just went for it. So.
Does anything scare you still?
Well, you know, marrying the wrong person.
Why would you be afraid of that?
Well, because, you know, I don't know. I have a problem with that. No, I'm
That
just
is
joking.
a legitimate fear.
It is. It is.
Everyone should have that fear.
But I figure, you know, now that I know that it's not a requirement to get into heaven, you know, to be married, it's taken this big load off my shoulders.
You're kind of disappointing me. Behind the scenes, we have sort of agreed to.
When we're 90, if we're both still alive.
We're 90. We're going to be married. Look at her. She denies it on camera.
No, we will. No. But it's just, you know, that was a lot of pressure growing up
Yeah.
to
Oh,
find
yeah,
the
it
one.
was.
And I know we've talked about that, but that is a huge deal in the Mormon church. And I'll tell you, I carry that responsibility of always trying to look okay and say the right things and bake perfectly and make sure the guy's happy, and, you know. And once I realized when I did leave the church that that is so not necessary, I thought, well, all right, now I can relax and date who I want, you
Good.
know. But I've just been very busy, just keeping really busy. And I have crushes now and then, and they'll remain nameless. But, you know, as soon as Donny Osmond gets divorced, no, I'm just joking. I'm just kidding.
Donny Osmond, boy. Hey, you bring your crushes by our place downtown. I want to meet the crushes before you get too serious.
I think I will. I'm going to have you vet people.
I will be vetting. I will be the date vetter. All right. The other thing, your book. You've been working on one. Are you still working on it?
I am.
How's that going?
It's going very, very well. I've gone back to the very beginning. I started writing, and it's interesting because I talk about even when I was, not that I was there, that sounds weird, but when I was conceived. That sounds so strange. Thank you. My parents, I was conceived in Vancouver, Washington, and then my parents split up. And my mom just had my brother Kevin, who was 9 months at the time. And she had left my father and went back to California. And my dad moved to BYU. And he was actually in the Army Intelligence out in Vancouver, Washington. He was stationed out there. So he's a bigwig that way. And then all of a sudden, the next thing we know, he's at BYU as a student. And he had joined a fraternity. And my mom found out she was pregnant with me in California and made the decision to take my dad back. And so she joined him in Provo, Utah, and they got an apartment, and so that's where I was born. And I think my mom basically held that over my head most of my life.
Wow. That
she went back with him, because she was absolutely stunningly beautiful and could have had, married someone else, but she chose to go back with him. And he was horrendous to her.
And it was your fault.
And it was my fault, and I carried that, and I heard about it a lot. And so in my book, I'm pretty raw, like I'm just, here it is. And I add some humor in there, because sometimes you just have to laugh. And but I'm very honest, and I go back a little bit about my mom's history and my father's history too, to kind of set the stage for me being born into this family. And then kind of what was expected and things like that.
So I hear the phone's ringing. If someone has a question for Christy, Wendy, will you see if they if Mary can put it through? All these 3 deaths in 3 years, your fears that you had before, the experiences you've gone through at the hands of a man who is supposed to be a man of God. The religious inculcation and all that Mormonism has done to you. And now you've had like some exponential success in the past year. It's just like piling on, and I think it's going to continue to go, and I hope it does. I hope you have your own show on CBS and you're doing your thing, and it would be great.
Thank you. I look forward to it.
Yeah, the question I have, your heart, honest to goodness, mind, heart, God, Jesus. Are they there? Are they not? Do you have a different view of them?
I was just talking to Larry about this before we came on, is that it's a journey. I think life is a journey, and I've gone from, one of the shows you talked about is there's people that lie in wait for you to leave the Mormon church, and a lot of these pastors jump on you. Not physically, that'd be weird, but they try to reach you and bring you into their flock. And then it's their interpretation. So I've gone through this huge journey in my life. I very much believe in God, very much. I've felt his place in my life. My relationship with him has evolved into different things. So I really don't know where I'm at as far as, exact religion and anything like that. I know that I don't believe in religion at all. I don't go to churches. I do feel very close to God. I've never been more grounded in my entire life. And I think people don't realize that you don't have to go to church to have a relationship with your Creator.
Amen.
You do not have to. It's not required. You don't need to give anybody money for it. He created you. He knows your heart. He knows your mind. And whatever that looks like in your relationship with him that grows is between you and him. And people just need to let you be that way, whatever that is.
Afterlife?
I do believe in an
Kathy,
afterlife.
Mom waiting for you?
Absolutely. And here's, we talked about this last year sometime, but I truly believe that when we die, we live on. And it, I don't know if there's other lives that we live, but I do know that truly feel that there is a life review that happens. I don't believe in this everlasting hell where we're burning forever. I think that God loves us, his children, and I truly believe that. I think that you have to come to terms with whatever you put people through. I think you'll feel what you did to them, and however long that life review has to be, because you need to know that, what you did. And I do think at some point you are brought back into God's presence, And I just don't think you're floating around on a cloud. I do think learning is a
hope
huge
not.
thing. Yeah, that'd be boring.
That'd be
Could you
horrible.
imagine?
Yeah.
I'd see you on a cloud. Oh, what's up?
Yeah, and the heart plane.
Aren't you glad you were good in life?
Yeah, doesn't make sense, does it?
Yeah.
So, and then, no big deal, but purpose of life in your mind now, after what you've seen with Kathy's death and Kevin and everything, and then what's the purpose of life? What would you tell someone else?
I think the purpose of life is all about learning what it feels like to be human. I think we are, like that saying said, that we are not human beings having a spiritual experience. We are spiritual beings having a human experience. And that made sense to me. But I think we're here to learn about life and experience earth and life and people, and to learn I think it's all about learning. And I think to realize how incredibly beautiful and wonderful we are. Like I said in my talk the other night, that famous saying with that lady is like, our fear is not that we're broken, it's that we are incredible. And sometimes that's fear for
Sure.
people, that we are powerful human beings, and that, you take someone like my father who did so much damage to so many people's lives. I mean, forever ruined, and our brains were rewired. I mean, horrendous damage. And then you take one other person who's sacrificed and loved people, and the influence that they can have. So it's about the power of one person and what they can do with their life. And it's up to that individual what they want to do with their life. People don't realize that's the freedom that they have.
Yeah.
And if you have a dream and it lives inside of you, don't let anybody tell you you can't do it. I mean, who would have thought I would be telling jokes in Utah?
We have a call. This might be Mike Norton. It's a Mike on line one. Let's find out. Mike, you're on Heart of the Matter.
Is this Shawn?
This is Shawn. You have to turn off your computer, Mike.
I did, Shawn.
If
Thank
it's
you.
Mike Norton, I'm going to tease the heck out of him.
All right.
Is it
Shawn,
off, Mike? Every caller we've ever
You know, I had a similar experience with
doesn't
this
sound
gal.
like
I had a wife that was physically abused by her dad, and I married her to get her out of that situation. And it seems so similar to this situation.
I'm sorry about what happened with your wife. That's one of the things that you don't realize when you marry someone or you're going out with someone, the tremendous, and I don't want to say toll, but you have to give them a little bit of credit for, because it takes a toll on people. But what's beautiful is also that when you're an abuse victim and you've survived it, your understanding and the beauty that lies within you, and you're with the right person, it's so beautiful. It has to be, right? It's gonna sound weird, I've been with a few guys that I thought were absolutely wonderful for me, and when you are evenly yoked, as the scriptures say, that's beautiful, and they can understand what you've been through and they're loving and kind about it. Whew, that makes all the difference in the world.
Mike, are you still with your wife?
No.
Yeah.
No, we're still married, but I'm just separated about 10 or 12 years.
Wow.
And, but I love her. I love her to death. And, but it just seems like a very similar situation.
I bet.
She was abused by her father, and I came home from my mission, and I decided I needed to marry her to get her away from him. And it just seems like a pretty similar thing.
Really appreciate you calling, brother. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Shawn. Love you.
Love you too. Bye. Yeah, I would imagine that there are similar traits in that completely.
It
Can't help
is, especially, too, when it's your father. Your father's supposed to be the one that protects you from the bad guys.
Yeah.
And when your dad's the bad guy, you know, and starts doing, you know, really bad things to you, it really, talk about taking away your faith in life and your whole understanding of men, you know, and it gets really messed up in your head.
Yeah.
And that's why, you know, these perpetrators and these child rapists and these people that do harm to other people's lives, we need to hold them accountable, Shawn. I'm telling you, laws. I've been getting involved. Thank God for Angela Kelly. I love that woman. She fights for victims' rights. And, you know, we were talking about working on another law that we want to see be more strong. You know, like the mandatory reporting laws. In different states, they have these exceptions when it comes to clergy. You know, so if a rapist goes into his clergyman and says, you know, I rape a child, or I'm raping a child, the clergy is not obligated to report that. But if the victim comes in an hour later or whatever and says, this guy is raping me, they're under obligation by law to report that immediately. Their first call should be to the police to get that reported. No matter what he said an hour ago, the rapist. There needs to be stricter laws. These guys, I am disgusted, and I'll get wound up. You want to see Kathy come out in me. But I'll tell you, this gentleman, well, I didn't want to call him that, this perpetrator, this Mormon bishop out of Lehi, Utah, right?
Yeah.
So he does all his damage, right, to these boys. And the minimum, I was told, the minimum punishment should have been 10 years for him, and he got 4 months.
Why?
Well, I don't know, but what's interesting is he got a letter of support written by the Utah House Speaker.
Wow.
Who's now running for governor. I have a problem with that.
Yeah.
You know, I'd like to see that letter of support for this guy. And that's the problem, is all these people that are, whatever religion they are, the need to cover it up bothers me. Like, that's only going to hurt your religion, right? By covering up these people.
They don't think so.
And it doesn't do them any service. For my dad to be coddled for years by the church, that man never repented. He couldn't even say the word. I mean, he thinks his big punishment in life was being excommunicated for a year. So he couldn't even understand, like, why should the cops be involved? You know, I got X'd. You know, and you're like, oh my God, you don't get it. Yeah.
One, are you, with Angela Kelly, you're going to be getting involved in more political?
Yep.
Did I say it right?
Absolutely.
What?
That's just one of the things,
That's just one of the things?
Yeah, we're going to be doing a lot. And
there's a lot of women in this audience, just to let you guys know, that are never here. So I think she has some followers going on and she's getting involved with things. So politically, you're going to be involved as well.
Absolutely, because I think the laws need to be, you know, there's laws that are in place that are not being followed and enforced.
Is it Utah specifically?
Specifically Utah. It is very plain. Someone went to a lot of trouble to get that mandatory reporting law in effect, but they are not following it, and it is a shame. I don't understand why they're not handcuffing these Mormon leaders, literally being arrested for not reporting it. And then what it does is it creates more victims, you know, and then they give them these small sentences, like these guys who have child pornography, thousands of pictures, and they give them 90 days. And you're like, are you kidding? And then I was mad at the judges. Well, somebody needs, you know, to get them. And I'm like, but then you find out it's the prosecutors that are bumping down their offenses to like a nothing, and they're getting probation, and you're like, what's that about?
Is it the good old boy system?
It's
is it the Mormon Church?
I believe it is. I have never seen a state in my life.
Mormon Church?
I've never seen a religion have so much power over state law. So I'm like, something's going to have to happen. And I've also, you know, reached out to the state senator in California, Senator Hill, who's trying to get the clergy exemption removed from the mandatory reporting law there. So there, you know, across the board, it shouldn't even be in there. But even when you have the laws in place, when they're not being enforced, what in the hell is that about? You know, that's ridiculous.
So there's plenty of attacks that you can be involved in. I think they should get rid of everything. I think they should get rid of 501c3, tax-exempt donations. Anything that churches are getting some special deal on, get rid of them. And it'll get a lot of the riffraff right out of the business.
Yeah.
And it'll get the people who just kind of want to serve God, maybe maybe it will get more of them doing it, you know?
Well, sure, yeah, as soon as it hurts the church financially, I think then that's when there's a wake-up call.
Yeah.
I just don't understand the cover-up, and it's in all these religions. It's like, why don't you want to be the church that's known as doing the right thing? Quit dealing with crime. That's not your business. You can deal with the sin and let law enforcement deal with crime, period. No one's above the law.
It's great. It's a great platform. I hope you girls are all successful with it. How much time do we have? 5 minutes left? I got to ask one question. I didn't ask you this when we sat before, Christy, but your dad, that guy, I remember seeing him around town and at the CES thing, big guy and, you know, handsome guy. And what, did he have a history? Do you know any of this? I have 3 daughters. I love women. I've gotten in trouble with women since I was 8. I love women. I could never get involved with my daughters sexually. Is it sexual? Is it some sort of other evil? What the fluck is driving a father to hurt their daughters?
I think it has to do with power.
Is that it?
He did, because not only did he hurt us girls, and it's not very well known, but Kevin was also hurt by my father. He sexually abused Kevin, and I don't really talk about it because Kevin passed, but I was present at the time because I was 6 and Kevin was 7 when it was happening.
When he brought you in the house, right?
Well, it wasn't just the physical abuse, it was the sexual abuse as well. And my dad, you know, just, it didn't matter what age, you know, because he started on one of my sisters right when she was born.
Right.
And it has to do with power. And my dad swears up and down that he was never molested, ever in his whole life. Never a history in the family whatsoever. So for him to not have any kind of certain age that he preferred or anything like that, it was from ages 0, like 1 month, to 18 years of age, you know. And I am positive that us kids were not the only ones. You know, he had too many students, both in seminary and at Brigham Young University and in the Institute program. I know there's just tons. I know that there's other victims out there. And the fact that he is never going to be arrested, even when he confessed to the Lehigh police in the film, they didn't show that part, but we have 2.5 hours of raw footage. But he literally tells the cops what he did. And they're like, you know, we can't arrest him. He wants to be on the sex offender list and we can't add him. You know, and the Lehigh police promised us that day that they were going to interview the children that were running around in his home and also around his neighborhood. And they were like, who are these children? And we're like, exactly. And so they said, we will promise you, because we can't arrest him for what he did to you, but we will interview these children, their parents, will tell the neighborhood. And that was not done.
Wow. That was a shocking moment in that film.
Yeah.
Shocking.
So how does he get away with that still to this day? What is wrong with people?
So really quick, we're out of time, but why haven't they arrested him? Why didn't they follow up with the children? And no clue?
We don't know, but we're certainly going to find out, aren't we? We're working on it right now.
Awesome. Well, Christy, we like to give our guests the last word to the audience of anything they want to say. Remind them, if you would, in your last words about how to contact what you're doing and where to do it.
Sure. It's nocrimeandsin.com, and there's a contact link there, and go ahead and enter your information. You can ask us any questions you want. You can also put in a request to have the film shown. You do need to see it. And any victims that are currently being hurt right now, I want you to know that you are not alone at all. God is not okay with what's happening to you. A lot of times people say, well, you know, it must be God's. It's not. He's just as upset as you are. It's not okay, and you need to tell. You need to get it reported. And it doesn't matter if it happened 40 years ago, 30 years ago. You need to make a police report and get it documented. It will hurt your family if it's family. People want you to be quiet about it because it happened so long ago. Do not let that stop you, because you are not the only victim. 9 times out of 10, there are more victims out there, and you need to tell. I don't care how long it's been, tell somebody. And if you're not believed, you keep telling until someone believes you and there's documentation. And then get help. Don't think that you are unscathed. I thought I was unscathed. You're not. You need to seek counseling. If you get a crappy counselor that makes you feel uncomfortable, find another one until you get a good counselor. And then, you know, your family's going to give you a hard time. We lost family members that didn't talk to us for years. And it's going to be dark and it gets yucky, I'm not going to lie. But in the end, it's worth it because you're true to yourself and you may be saving someone else's life. So it's worth it. You're going to find your people.
Christy Johnson, my dear friend, a woman of beauty, a
Thank
woman
you.
of poise, and a woman
Thanks.
of great courage.
Thank you.
So proud of you. Keep going.
Thank you.
We'll see you next week with Ryan McKnight here on Heart of the Matter.